So Deuteronomy chapter 23, starting at verse 12. You shall have a place outside the camp. So this is in the instructions that were given to the Israelites. And you shall go out to it. And you shall have a trowel with your tools. And when you sit down outside, you shall dig a hole with it and turn back and cover up your excrement. Because the Lord your God walks in the midst of your camp to deliver you and to give you up your enemies before you. So their rule was to keep your camp sacred. Now why I say that is because toileting in the desert is something that is a must. We don't have another toilet until we exit out this afternoon. So if you need to go to the toilet, if you leave tissue on the ground, it will flow away and it will become rubbish. So bury everything. Bury your evidence of where you've been. Bury any paper that you use. If you need to go, find a private place. Take yourself behind a rock somewhere. Use a rock to dig a little hole and take yourself there. Don't be embarrassed about needing to go because we all have to do that. So please let us know. We've got tissues on us if anybody wants tissues. But story, they're sharing information. So there's commonalities. So when you see figures with arms up, it usually means praise, worship, or celebration. So you can see three figures in the top with their arms up. So they're doing one of those things. But when you have a look at those three figures, you can tell they're actually men. They're males. So they're naked males who are celebrating. And then if you have a look in the bottom left, there's another figure, and the arms are more of this shape. And oftentimes that refers to a female because it's mimicking the shape of the female's breasts. So, and you can tell it's not a male. So we've got some naked people up there. We have animals as well. So it comes back to the reference when Moses was coming down off the mountain, the golden calf. Yes, they were worshipping a false god, but the Bible also talks about the word revelry is often used. It's often talking about the sexual acts that were taking place. So we can sort of put this together with the references to improper activity occurring. So that's what we're seeing here. Was this done at the time, or is this done as a story to tell of what happened in this region? Let's keep on.
So there may have been a chance that the group split up into 2 or 3 groups. Some may have gone down the canyon, but travelled along the sea edge. But the sea shore is basically mountain. So you wouldn't get a large mass of people. A small, perhaps. There is a smaller canyon that heads south. I think the best chance is backtracking. So this is effectively a nature walk. It is an Islamic site. So in Islam, they believe that Moses, he didn't hold his staff in the air, he actually struck the water and split the sea. And when he split the sea, the force was so great that it split the mountain on the other side. And this is the mountain. And so this mountain has a split that runs for 5 kilometres. So from one end of the mountain to the other, it is effectively cut in half. So this is an Islamic tradition more so than an Exodus tradition. So I was just thinking that there may be people that they don't want to do the nature walk, or they may want to do a short part of the nature walk and want to spend a bit of time in the main part of the Elim Oasis. So if you would like to do that, you could maybe walk for half an hour and then come back and then we'll drive up to the main oasis and spend more time up there. But for those who want to get the maximum canyon experience, then they can walk for an hour and a half.
Is there more?
I'm at the site of one of the oases out here, and possibly the one that Moses took the children of Israel to, called Elim, because there's certainly more than 70 palms here, and at one time someone counted 12 springs. This is just one of them. But Moses was a shepherd out here in this area of Midian for over 40 years, so would have known where all the oases were, and certainly would have known about this one. So whether it's Elim or a second Red Sea camp, we're not sure, but almost positive that the children of Israel were here at one time or another. And you can see bubbling up from the ground that is indeed a spring that is still active today. We're at the split rock of Horeb. You can obviously see the split, and we're climbing up to it. Can give you a better scale of size by seeing the people in comparison with it.
To the test. But the people were thirsty for water there, and they grumbled against Moses. They said, "Why did you bring us out of Egypt to make us and our children and livestock die of thirst?" Then Moses cried out to the Lord, "What am I to do with these people? They are almost ready to stone me." The Lord answered Moses, "Go out in front of the people, take with you some of the elders of Israel, and take in your hand the staff which you struck the Nile, and go. I will stand there by you by the rock at Horeb. Strike the rock, and water will come out of it for the people to drink." So Moses did this in the sight of the elders of Israel, and he called the place Massah and Meribah, because the Israelites quarreled, and because they tested the Lord, saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?" So that's the Exodus account. Paul gives us a deeper understanding of the passage and more the theological aspects of the passage in 1 Corinthians chapter 10. I'm just reading from verse 1. "For I do not want you to be ignorant of the fact, brothers and sisters, that our ancestors were all under the cloud, and they all passed through the sea. They were all baptized with Moses in the cloud and in the sea. They all ate the same spiritual food, and they drank the same spiritual drink, for they drank from the spiritual rock that accompanied them, and that rock was Christ." So they drank from the spiritual rock that accompanied them, and that rock was Christ. So Christ was with the people the whole way. This rock represents Christ. So here we have the people. They get here and they grumble against the Lord, and they deserve the Lord's justice, punishment. But instead, God shows them the cross. He shows them mercy. He gives them life-giving water. So for me, Exodus is all about Christ. From the Passover in Egypt to Mara, where the people grumbled for water, to Split Rock, where the people grumbled for water, at Sinai, where the people rebelled and worshipped an idol. At all of those places, God shows them mercy, shows them the cross. At every stage, Jesus is with them. And at every stage of the Exodus, Christ is represented. They may have not been aware of the theology, the references to Christ, but it's there for us. As Paul says, they're there as a reminder for us. So, life-giving water flowed from this split rock. When Christ's side was pierced, life-giving water and blood flowed from his side. And the other aspect of this split rock is at the height of the split, is apparently equivalent to the height of the curtain in the temple that split. So when the height of the curtain in the temple split, it provided a way for people to enter the Holy of Holies. So that now access to God is now available to his people. And the story doesn't end here, because in 40 years' time, the people reach another place, Kadesh Barnea. And at Kadesh Barnea, there's no water, and they complain. So God says at that point that to Moses, speak to the rock. Here he says, strike the rock. So when Moses struck the rock, it was like he was being struck by the centurion that speared him in the side. So this represents the crucifixion of Christ. So when they got to Kadesh Barnea, God wanted to illustrate life in Christ. That access to Christ was simply speaking to Christ, speak to the rock. But instead of speaking to the rock, Moses struck the rock. So he was illustrating the crucifixion all over again. And if Christ had to be crucified twice, he wasn't perfect. He wasn't the perfect sacrifice. He wasn't divine. He wasn't God. So anyone who denies that Christ is not divine will no longer be able to enter the promised land. The promised land is for those who recognize that Christ is the perfect sacrifice. So Moses was the illustration of those people. He was denied access into the promised land. But we will meet Moses in heaven. We know Moses got to heaven because he appeared with Elijah at the Mount of Transfiguration. But he was used as a time and time again to illustrate the crucifixion of Christ. At Mara, which we haven't spoken about, at the Passover previous to that, also here at Split Rock, and also again we'll talk about how Christ was represented at Sinai.
Okay, you got that in your mind?
Yeah.
If you have a look to the left, there's gravel all over the surface of the cliff. You know, that sand and gravel. But if you look to the right, you're seeing that red exposed rock. It does not have the same level of gravel over it. There's gravel behind us, there's gravel down there, there's gravel everywhere, except this section here. This section. So you can imagine when God performed this miracle, and he caused the rock to be split and the water to come out, it wasn't a little trickle coming down. It was a huge miracle. It was tremendous, the force of the water coming out. We're on a little hill. It's not an underground stream that's just running out. It's an impossibility. Only God can cause the water to come up and out. Yeah?
Yeah.
And if you have a look, the majority of the water has run in this direction. Yeah, you can see the little waterways. There still has water run off that way. You could see water run down the back and around, but the majority of water has flown this way. And as it heads down, there is before this big mountain in front, this big hill in front of us. To the left of it is actually quite a deep washout.
It's a low point.
Yeah.
So
but just here, follow the road where the majority of water went, and then it's run down into behind us, that low point there.
Yeah, so the wadi that we're looking at towards the northwest is where the majority of water would have ended up. So all this topsoil would have ended up down there. And we've walked down, there's two waterfalls that goes down there. So in these rocks in front of us, there's two low points. One low point is towards the right, and you can actually see a current stream that goes down there. And there's another low point towards the left, and it hugs these high hills to our left. So the majority of water would have gone down those two, and we've walked down one and come back up the other. And if you look at the bottom, there's a bit of a man-made lake where the water coming down has dug a bit of a trench.
Pete,
we-
are you saying on the other side of this ridge is where the water would have
Yeah,
collected?
so that
Yes,
big
yes.
white sandy gravelly
yeah.
area down in there.
That's interesting.
And water would have continued around to the left and out. If pools are there but continued to flow.
So the topsoil here
It's
gets,
all ended up out there, and you can see how, yeah.
how much is there?
So the population would have been in that area that we drove up. So there's a big plain that runs all the way up to the base of the mountain and all the way down that we were, as well as that lower wadi that we're looking into.
And there's a large section just behind the rock here too.
Yeah, so wherever the people were, they could access the water from multiple directions. So in the biblical account, it refers to rivers, plural. So water going some to the south, some to the north, but the vast majority going to the northwest. And it's
And I'm here at the split rock of Horeb, and whose dimensions are the same as the temple curtain when it's split, and also the same orientation. As I pan down and look around, you can look down to see where the water poured out and washed away the topsoil. Down there you see red rock, whereas elsewhere you see topsoil and gravel, but this one area, the rock has been exposed by the water erosion, and it collected in that basin there, that lake area, and that's where the people drank the water.
No, he doesn't. You should show Camille.
This is the site of Moses' altar, and which he constructed after the victory of the Amalekites. And in the background is the split rock of Horeb. But you'll notice a white line going through the middle. That's where Neom is projected to put their water pipe. And again, trying to either disrupt or destroy some of the sites that are associated with the Bible.
Tomorrow, I will stand on top of the hill with the staff of God in my hands. So Joshua fought the Amalekites as Moses had ordered, and Moses, Aaron and Hur went to the top of the hill. As long as Moses held up his hands, the Israelites were winning. But whenever he lowered his hands, the Amalekites were winning. When Moses' hands grew tired, they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it. Aaron and Hur held his hands up, one on one side, one on the other, so that his hands remained steady till sunset. So Joshua overcame the Amalekite army with a sword.
So this is the stone?
Yeah, someone carry that stone up. Well,
It does have the shape of the
that is amazing to think.
Okay, I'm at the site, the likely site of where Moses defeated the Amalekites. This is a raised hill in the middle of a vast wadi, and there's a stone in the middle. You can strategically see the whole battlefield. What also gives it credence is off in the distance is a large graveyard, and there's some modern Islam graves in there. And over here we have a large walled off graveyard with no graves in it, thinking that the Israelites might be buried there, and that no Arab would want to be buried with a Jew. So we've got a large battlefield area, a raised mound that would offer easily escape in case of need of retreat, and two large ancient graveyards in a place that doesn't have a whole lot of people. We're at the base of Mount Sinai getting ready to climb, and our route will be first up through that valley, and then where you can see the black start, we head out along the ridge line there up to the summit, which is up there, and actually it's behind there, and there's actually a higher spot there. But this is the hike of Mount Sinai, and it's projected to take all 8 hours. We are about 200 meters from the summit yet, and you can see that black sheen that's on the rocks. It's actually fairly common. It's called desert varnish, but this appears to be a little bit more shiny than desert varnish, and so it hasn't been tested. We don't know if the fire of God might have made it a little more shiny, but just the fact that it's shiny is not a sign that, you know, that there was fire up here. That's the basalt, the natural basalt on the top of the mountain, and experiencing somewhat of an oxidation process that gives it that real shiny effect. But it's true that the top 3 peaks of Mount Sinai, made up of 3 peaks, all have this real shiny desert varnish on it that may have been enhanced by the presence of God. We don't know, but I think it is. Here I am at the top of Mount Sinai, looking down into the valleys below the mountain of the Lord. And it's pretty far up. Top of Mount Sinai here, elevation about 7,500 feet. And you can see all the way into Egypt and probably Jordan. But down into the valley where the children of Israel would have come. And this is the mountaintop where Moses would have stood speaking to the Lord. Up at the top of Mount Sinai, you can't help but notice at the peak here how the rocks have been split, and they all have that desert varnish, but I think it's a special anointed desert varnish that's been caused here by the presence of the Lord. And it's just awesome to think that here's where God met with Moses and spoke with him. It's an inspiring spot.